Towering over Old Quebec City, the historic birthplace of French Canada, is the Chateau Frontenac, a magnificent hotel built by the Canadian Pacific Railway in 1893 in the style of the 17th century chateaux of France's Loire Valley. This Canadian icon stands on the grave of the Chateau Saint-Louis, a historic castle constructed in 1694 on the orders of Louis de Boued, Comte de Frontenac, Quebec's fiery, battle-scarred Governor-General, for whom the present hotel was named. All throughout the establishment, visitors can find memorials to the hotel's implacable namesake in the form of Frontenac's coat of arms, a family crest dominated by an unusual heraldic beast. These armorial bearings feature an azure shield emblazoned with 3 gold talons, surmounted by a crown and flanked by a pair of griffins, the latter being legendary monsters with the upper bodies of eagles and the lower bodies of lions. The raptor feet are supposed to be griffin claws. In 17th century New France, the image of the griffin was so strongly associated with Frontenac that the Count's most trusted agent, explorer René Robert Cavelier, Sieur de la Salle, gave its name to the second real sailing ship to ply the waters of the Great Lakes, and had a wooden rendering of its fearsome image mounted as its figurehead. The adventurer was often heard to declare that he would make the griffin fly above the crows, or help his benefactor triumph over the black-robed Jesuit missionaries of New France, for whom the Governor-General vied for power. The griffin is a monster of the Old World, the subject of an ancient legend born of classical Mediterranean in the Middle East. Roman naturalist Pliny the Elder, in Book 7 of his 1st century encyclopedia, Naturalis Historia, described it as a kind of beast with wings that digs gold out of mines, which, according to ancient Greek historians Herodotus and Aristeus, waged perpetual war with a race of one-eyed men from northern Scythia on the steppes of Eastern Europe. In Book 10 of that same magnum opus, the Roman naturalist described the creature as having ears and a terrible hooked beak, and designated Ethiopia its country of origin. Tradition had it that the griffin was the mortal enemy of horses, and many artistic interpretations of the monster depict it battling with its equine nemesis. The legend of the griffin survived in Europe in the Middle Ages, the conception of its subject crystallizing in the form of an eagle-lion hybrid, which distinguished it from other bestial raptors, like the Anatolian chimera, the winged serpentine goat lion of Greek mythology, or the cockatrice, the rooster-headed dragon of English myth. It took on a noble aspect in the Christian mind, bearing characteristics of both the regal lion, king of the beasts, and the majestic eagle, monarch of the skies, and subsequently developed an association with Christ and the Catholic Church. It found its way into the ornamentation of churches and cathedrals throughout Christendom, and onto the coats of arms of European states, towns, and noble houses. Despite its Old World origins, the legend of the griffin has a stunning yet little-known parallel in the indigenous folklore of the Laurentian Northwoods. Long before the Comte de Frontenac had his coat of arms emblazoned on the walls of the Chateau Saint-Louis, before La Salle's Le Griffin made its maiden voyage across Lakes Erie, Huron, and Michigan, the Iroquois of upstate New York told stories about a flying predatory mammal which serves as a dark North American counterpart to the eagle-headed lion of Eurasian lore. In their 1908 book, Myths and Legends of the New York State Iroquois, American historians Harriet Maxwell Converse and Arthur Caswell Parker included an old Seneca Iroquois legend about an ominous blue or sky-colored chimera called a Deh-oh-niot or Deh-oh-niot, a sort of aerial grim reaper who haunts the tall treetops in the high mountain crests. With the face of a wolf, the wings of a vulture, the body of a panther, and claws like a hawk, the historians wrote, the Deh-oh-niot wanders in the pathway of spirits, and is one of the emissaries death sends to the earth to gather souls. The sick fear him, the dying hear him clawing at the door, where he whines like a cat if the spirit is departing, or barks like a wolf if it is not ready to travel. The historians went on to describe the creature's panther-like tail, which it lashed as it flew, trailing fire in its wake. His death cry may be mistaken for the mewing of the house cat, they continued, or the bark of a dog at the door, for only the dying can distinguish between the voices. Therefore Deh-oh-niot is the dread of each lodge, where he may at any time enter when death sends him to gather souls. To hear the voice of Deh-oh-niot is an evil omen, and some dire calamity will follow those who have listened to it. If Deh-oh-niot appears to a person who is not ill, his death will soon follow. While Deh-oh-niot is possessed of the ferocity of the wolf, the stealthiness of the panther, the rapaciousness of the vulture, and the claw weapons of the hawk, all these are necessary in his task of gathering evil spirits for death. This obscure Iroquois tradition could be dismissed as the product of native fancy, were it not for an astonishing article avowedly published in some issue of the New York Press, which this author could not locate, and republished in the October 10, 1892 issue of Savannah, Georgia's Morning News. This remarkable story, brought to my attention by my friend and fellow researcher Kevin Gould, is set in the Quebec forest near the village of Saint-Amélie-de-l'Énergie, which lies 33 kilometers northwest of the city of Joliet, which in turn lies on the L'Assomption River, about 36 kilometers northwest of Montreal. Nearly as obscure as the old Seneca legend it evokes, this forgotten event hints at the disturbing possibility that the tale of the Deh-oh-niot might be composed of more fact than fable. Montreal, September 27, 1892, the article began. A most extraordinary story comes from Joliet today, which, if true, leaves forever buried in the shadowy shade of oblivion the most fantastic sea serpent that ever plowed the briny. It is an account of the killing, at the little village of Saint-Amélie-de-l'Énergie, of a monster half bird, half beast, whose classification will puzzle the most deeply learned naturalist. While I have not seen the monster in question, the Inquirer correspondent has the story from the mouth of Médard Lassalle, a worthy and reputable farmer of Saint-Amélie-de-l'Énergie, whose son Joseph Lassalle captured and killed it, and also from 3 well-known residents of Joliet, where the monster is now being prepared for exhibition to the scientists of McGill University of Montreal. The story of the capture of the bird beast and its description are as follows. For 2 weeks past, the farmers of Saint-Amélie-de-l'Énergie and neighboring villages have suffered from the depredations of some beast of prey who nightly visited their sheepfolds and carried off some of the finest lambs. It was generally supposed that a bear was in the neighborhood, and the farmers have been on the alert for the capture of his bearship. On Wednesday of last week, Joseph Lassalle, a big young fellow of 25 years, went in search of the supposed bear, armed with a double-barreled rifle. Some 5 miles back in the woods from the village named, he was startled by hearing a loud croaking cry, and looking upward, he saw, circling high above in the air, an immense creature that he at first took to be a monster eagle. The bird, or whatever it was rapidly descending, and Lassalle, who was a crack marksman, took careful aim and fired. The monster was struck and badly wounded by the heavy rifle bullet, and screaming with pain and rage, it came tumbling to the earth. As it landed, he gave it the other barrel of the rifle, and still thinking it was an eagle, rushed on it with his clubbed gun. A terrible battle ensued, lasting for several moments. Then the victory was with the man, and the monster lay dead at his feet. He now had time for a closer inspection of his game, but the thing presented such an awful and unnatural appearance that he was terror-stricken and ran back to the village for help. He was accompanied back by his father and 4 other young farmers. The monster was then carefully examined by the farmers, who described it as follows. It had 2 great wings, measuring 15 feet from tip to tip. The head, which was 15 inches in circumference, resembles that of a large monkey. The body was 5 feet long, and while the back part was covered with big black feathers, the under part was covered with fur or coarse hair. The feet or claws resembled the legs of a wolf, and under the tail feathers was a long appendage with a tuft at the end that looked like the tail of a calf. Lying with wings extended on the ground, the monster looked as big as a horse, and when weighed was found to turn the scale at 300 pounds. A team had to be sent to bring it back to the village. Then it was seen by Alderet Charlon, a councillor of the town of Joliet, who was going through the country purchasing produce. He bought the monster, probably for exhibition purposes, from the Lassalles, and Friday evening last, it was brought by train to his place of business in Joliet, where it is now in process of preparation to prevent decay, after which it will be shipped to this city for scientific examination. Those who claim to have seen the monster say it is the most extraordinary sight they ever witnessed, and it is hardly possible that all the respectable men who tell the story about it can be lying. And if not, what can the monster be that at the present is causing such a sensation in the Joliet district of the province? This Quebecois chimera, in physical appearance at least, bears eerie resemblance to the flying portent of Iroquois legend. Its monkey-like head would not be dissimilar to the Deh-oh-niot's wolf head, where the primate referenced a baboon. Its large black wings sharply evoke the vulture wings of the Seneca monster, in all but scale. Its lupine legs and furry coat are comparable to the panther-like body of the Iroquois omen, discounting the latter's hawk-like talons. And its bovine tail is consistent with the panther-like appendage of the Haudenosaunee Angel of Death. Barring the possibility that the story is a fabrication, the tale from Sainte-Amélie de l'Énergie gives weight to the notion that there might be more to the legend of the Deh-oh-niot than longhouse myth. Perhaps the heraldic beast of the Chateau Frontenac is not the only griffin to haunt Quebec. Thanks for watching. This channel is on life support, but I've been able to continue making videos thanks to your generous assistance. I'd like to thank everyone who has helped me get through this rough patch by donating, making purchases on my website, becoming a patron of the Gary Mangiacoper Archive, and becoming a member of this channel. Your help is truly appreciated. I would also like to invite those who would like to show support and have the means to do so to consider becoming a member of this channel. For $2 a month, you can officially join this channel by clicking the Join button on my channel's homepage. Every time you leave a comment on one of my videos, a little Canadian monster will appear beside your name, which will change with the amount of time you've been a member. You can cancel your membership anytime by clicking your profile image in the top right-hand corner, clicking Purchases and Memberships, Manage Membership, and Cancel. Thank you for helping keep this channel alive.